Lauren Mitchell, a 40-year-old seasoned project manager at HorizonTech, had just finished training a new intern when she was abruptly fired under the excuse of budget restructuring. Branded as old school Lauren, she walked away without a BI. Seen, but she held a power in her hands that they never saw coming. I always thought loyalty counted for something. 7 years of showing up early, staying late, mentoring new hires, smoothing over client meltdowns. I really believed it mattered. But sitting there in that sterile conference room, across from Eric Coleman in his tailored suit and smug expression, I realized how naive I'd been. "We're restructuring the team," Eric said, tossing the words out like crumbs to a pigeon. "Budget constraints, shifting priorities. You understand, Lauren." He didn't even look at me when he said it, too busy straightening the expensive pen. On his desk, HR was perched next to him, clipboard in hand, eyes already darting toward the exit like she couldn't wait to be done with this. "But we just secured the Marshall City contract," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. "And I just submitted Maya's final training report. She's barely ready to handle the workload on her own." Eric smiled, that tight, patronizing smile I'd seen him use on interns. "Maya represents the future, Lauren. Fresh perspective, agile thinking, not—" His gaze flicked up to me then, sharp and dismissive. "Old school Lauren." The words hit harder than the actual firing. Old school. Like I was a relic. Like knowing how to fix a crashing server at 2 a.m, or having clients trust me to handle million-dollar contracts without babysitting, was somehow a liability now. HR slid a manila folder across the table. "Your severance package. Details," she said, not meeting my eyes. 2 weeks' pay, 7 years reduced to 2 lousy weeks and a pat on the head. I stared at them both for a moment, feeling the humiliation settle under my skin like a slow-burning fire. Then, without a word, I stood up, gathering the laptop and notebook I'd brought with me. I didn't need them to tell me it was over. On the way out, I passed Maya in the hallway, her glossy hair bouncing as she laughed at something on her phone. She caught sight of me, blinked, and then quickly looked away. Guilt? Maybe. Or maybe she was already sliding into the role I'd been shoved out of. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to grovel or beg. If HorizonTech thought they could replace me like swapping out an outdated app, they were about to learn just how badly they'd miscalculated. Not today. But soon. The ride home was a blur. I don't even remember hitting half the green lights. Just the dull hum of the engine and the hollow feeling of betrayal gnawing at my ribs. 7 years dumped into a manila folder. I should have been furious. Hell, I was furious. But somewhere underneath the rage, there was something else bubbling up. Something sharper. Something that felt dangerously like satisfaction. By the time I pulled into my driveway, it clicked into place. Mitchell Compliance Consulting, LLC. Most people at HorizonTech barely even knew the name. To them, it was just a line on some forgotten onboarding form. But Mitchell Compliance wasn't a hobby or a side gig. It was a legally registered business. My business. Created 5 years ago when HorizonTech started landing government contracts and needed a bulletproof compliance process to seal the deals. Eric had practically begged me to formalize my expertise back then. Said it would look good on paper during audits. What he either didn't know, or conveniently forgot, was that all compliance certifications for HorizonTech's major contracts, including the shiny new $18 million Marshall City project, were processed through my LLC. And nothing, absolutely nothing, was finalized without my digital sign-off. I grabbed my laptop off the passenger seat, marched straight into my kitchen, and booted it up at the table. Fingers trembling slightly, not with fear but with adrenaline, I pulled up the active contracts. There it was, glaring at me from the screen. Marshall City Data Infrastructure Project. Status. Pending final compliance certification. My heart thudded once, heavy and slow. No certification, no launch. No launch, no payday. For a second, I just sat there, letting it all wash over me. The humiliation, the anger, the insult of being called old-school Lauren-like experience was some kind of disease. They had treated me like I was disposable, replaceable, like Maya could just hop onto the project, post a few selfies with her shiny new desk, and somehow navigate a federal compliance maze that took me 2 decades to master. I leaned back in, my chair, a slow grin spreading across my face. Let them try. Because without my signature, HorizonTech wasn't just screwed. They were dead in the water. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger. No lawsuits, no screaming matches, no dramatic confrontations. All I had to do was exactly what they told me to do. Walk away, and watch them burn. By the next morning, the anger had cooled into something far more dangerous: focus. I wasn't about to sit at my kitchen table wringing my hands like some helpless victim. No, if HorizonTech thought they could ghost me after gutting my career, they were about to get a brutal reminder of exactly who they underestimated. I called Alexis Rivera the second I finished my coffee. Alexis wasn't just any employment attorney. She was a bulldog in designer heels, the kind of woman who once shredded a Fortune 500 company in arbitration and sent them home licking their wounds. We met up at our usual coffee shop, tucked into a quiet corner where the smell of roasted beans almost masked the tension buzzing in the air. I laid everything out: the firing, the compliance bottleneck, the LLC setup. Alexis listened, nodding, her bright red lipstick twitching into a smirk more than once. Finally, she leaned back and tapped her pen against the edge of the table. "Let me get this straight," she said, arching a brow. "They fired you, but all. Their critical compliance certifications are tied directly to your independent company?" "Exactly," I said, trying not to sound too smug about it. She smiled like a shark scenting blood. "Then congratulations, Lauren. You hold the only key to their $18 million payday. And legally, you owe them absolutely nothing." It was like music to my ears. Alexis flipped open her tablet and began drafting a letter right there between sips of espresso. The language was perfect, formal, professional, and unmistakably lethal. Mitchell Compliance Consulting LLC was willing to complete the final certification process for a consulting fee of $60,000, payable upfront, plus formal acknowledgement as the official compliance specialist of record in all project documentation. "No discounts. No favors," Alexis said, glancing up at me. "They want the keys to the kingdom? They pay for the privilege." I signed the draft electronically without hesitation. Alexis would email it to HorizonTech's legal department before noon, which meant it would hit Eric Coleman's desk right in the middle of his beloved Friday team strategy meeting. Perfect timing. As I walked back to my car, the late morning sun warmed my face, and for the first time since Eric's smug little speech, I actually smiled. They had thrown me out like yesterday's garbage. They thought they were cutting costs, buying themselves some shiny new future with Maya and her curated LinkedIn posts. Instead, they'd bought themselves a disaster. And I couldn't wait to watch the fallout. By Saturday morning, the first emails started rolling in. At first, they were polite, stiff little notes from HorizonTech's HR department, seeking clarification about the status of the compliance documents. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and deleted each one without a second thought. Let them stew. By lunchtime, the tone had shifted. Eric called. Then he texted. Then he emailed. Subject line in all caps. Urgent. Need to discuss compliance. I didn't respond. Not because I hadn't seen them. Oh, believe me, I saw every desperate notification light up my phone. But because responding would have given them a sense of control, and they didn't deserve that. Not after what they'd done. By Sunday afternoon, things got downright pathetic. Maya emailed me personally, a cringeworthy attempt at a professional apology, dripping with fake humility. "Lauren, I hope we can move past any misunderstandings. Eric and I would love to offer you a special advisory role with an increased salary package if you could assist us with finalizing the Marshall City project. Special advisory role. Increased salary. Cute. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was about hurt feelings or bruised pride, that I could be bribed back with a shiny new title and a few extra dollars thrown my way, like I was some sad middle manager. Desperate for a second chance, I didn't even bother to reply. By Monday morning, the panic had escalated into full-blown meltdown. Multiple voicemails from Eric, each one sounding a little more frantic than the last. Promises of immediate bonuses. Offers to reintegrate me into the leadership team. Even, and I had to laugh at this one, a personal apology lunch with the executive board. Meanwhile, I sat in my sunny kitchen, flipping through seed catalogs and planning my spring garden. If they had paid a fraction of this attention to the actual work I did, maybe they wouldn't be in this mess. The best part? Word had started to spread. HorizonTech's biggest client, the city of Marshall, was beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about why the compliance process was stalled. The legal department couldn't hide behind buzzwords and fake optimism anymore, not when millions of dollars in taxpayer funding were on the line. By Tuesday, Eric wasn't begging anymore. He was threatening. A curt email landed in my inbox, warning that failure to cooperate might lead to legal consequences. Alexis practically cackled when I forwarded it to her. "Let him try," she said. "He'll look even dumber once the city finds out HorizonTech fired the one person who could legally certify their project." I didn't need to lift a finger. HorizonTech was imploding all by itself, faster than I could have ever orchestrated, and I was just getting started. Wednesday morning, just as I was settling in with a fresh cup of coffee and mentally planning out which flower beds needed reworking, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail. I had no interest in hearing another desperate plea from HorizonTech. But something nudged me. A quiet little instinct I'd learned to trust over the years. I picked up. "Lauren." "Mitchell?" a crisp, confident voice asked. "Speaking?" "This is Charles Dempsey. I believe you know my name." Oh, I knew it all right. Charles Dempsey was the Charles Dempsey, chief private investor behind the Marshall City Infrastructure Project, a man whose influence in city development was only matched by the size of his checkbook. I was hoping to discuss the current complications with the compliance process, he said, polite but firm. "Would you have time to meet today?" I agreed before he even finished the sentence. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from him at a sleek conference table in a high-rise overlooking downtown. No HR reps, no phony smiles, just Charles Dempsey, a folder thick with project documents, and a clear undercurrent of business-only efficiency. "I'll be blunt," he said, folding his hands neatly. "HorizonTech claims everything is under control. My contacts at the city say otherwise. They tell me nothing can move forward without your authorization." I nodded. "That's correct. My company, Mitchell Compliance, holds the authority on the regulatory side." "And HorizonTech fired you," he said, shaking his head with a small, incredulous laugh. "Brilliant move." I smiled thinly but said nothing. Charles leaned forward. "I don't have time for incompetence. The city doesn't either. So here's what I'm proposing. Forget HorizonTech. Work directly with the city as our lead compliance consultant. We'll formalize it through my development firm. 6-figure salary. Full autonomy over the compliance division. Build your own team if you want. Name your terms." For a moment, I just sat there, letting it sink in. Not just salvaging what I'd lost, but stepping into something far bigger than anything HorizonTech had ever offered me. "I'll need my attorney to review the contract," I said, keeping my voice even. "Of course," Charles replied, already sliding, a draft across the table. We shook hands before I left, his grip firm, the kind of handshake that seals deals and topples empires. As I stepped into the elevator, a slow, almost disbelieving smile crept onto my face. HorizonTech thought they'd clipped my wings. Instead, they'd catapulted me straight into a bigger, better arena, and this time, I was flying without anyone holding the leash. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. By the end of the week, the city officially terminated HorizonTech's involvement with the Marshall Project, citing failure to meet compliance deadlines in the announcement. It was phrased politely enough for public consumption, but anyone with half a brain knew what had really happened. HorizonTech had fired the one person they couldn't afford to lose. I watched the news break from my living room, a mug of chamomile, tea in hand, feeling an odd, detached sort of satisfaction. I wasn't out for revenge. I wasn't that small. But watching karma do its slow, deliberate work. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit beautiful. Charles Dempsey's move sent shockwaves through the local tech and development circles. Within days, other clients, who had always quietly depended on HorizonTech's flawless compliance record, started pulling their projects too. Turns out, when you build your reputation on the back of someone else's expertise, and then toss them out like expired milk, people notice, and they don't forgive. By the end of the month, HorizonTech's pipeline was a ghost town. Projects stalled, clients bailed, and rumors swirled like vultures over a carcass. No one wanted to be associated with a sinking ship, least of all, the board of directors. I heard through the grapevine that Maya didn't fare much better. Without me there to hold her hand, her shiny LinkedIn skills didn't get her very far. She struggled through one compliance disaster after another, until eventually, she was shuffled off to the internal marketing department. A soft landing, sure, but a clear demotion. 6 months later, she quietly updated her profile to seeking new opportunities. No hard feelings there. Honestly, she was young. Maybe this would be the reality check she needed. Eric, though? Eric got exactly what he deserved. Apparently, the board called an emergency meeting after the fourth major client terminated their contract. Words like lack of strategic foresight and critical leadership failures were thrown around. By the time the dust settled, Eric Coleman had resigned. Corporate speak for leave before we fire you. No press conference, no farewell party. Just a single sanitized email thanking him for his years of service and a LinkedIn profile that went mysteriously quiet afterward. Meanwhile, I was busier than ever. Charles introduced me to half the city's power players within a week of signing. The New Deal. I built a small but mighty team, women and men with real skills, the kind overlooked because they didn't fit some shiny, youth-obsessed mold. Mitchell Compliance was no longer just a side business. It was becoming a force of its own. Funny how fast the world can turn. 1 minute you're being called old school and shoved out the door. The next, you're the one writing the future, on your own terms. By the time summer rolled around, Mitchell Compliance wasn't just surviving. We were thriving. Word spread fast that if you wanted a project approved smoothly, you came to us. City planners, private investors, even rival tech companies started reaching out, eager to get on our client list. I handpicked my team carefully. Seasoned professionals, mostly women over 40, who knew exactly what it felt like to be underestimated, overlooked, and pushed aside because someone thought gray hair meant obsolescence. It wasn't enough just to rebuild my own career. I wanted to build a bridge for others too. So I started the Second Act Fund, a grant program specifically aimed at helping mid-career women facing workplace discrimination reskill, rebrand, and relaunch their lives. Watching those first grants go out, seeing women light up at the possibilities they thought they'd lost forever, it healed something in me that even the best contract never could. Then came the magazine features. First, a spotlight in Tech Leader, titled The Compliance Queen of Marshall City. Then Forbes Women called, wanting to profile how Mitchell Compliance was reshaping the industry standard. It felt surreal at first, sitting for interviews, seeing my name in glossy print, the same woman Eric Coleman had so casually dismissed, as old school Lauren. But honestly, it wasn't about proving anything to Eric or to Maya or to anyone who had written me off. It was about proving it to myself. That experience matters. That grit matters. That being damn good at what you do still matters, even in a world obsessed with whatever's shiny and new. Sometimes people ask me if I believe in karma. I usually just smile and say, it's not karma. It's simply the natural consequence of underestimating real experience. And trust me, that lesson they'll be feeling for a long, long time. If you enjoyed Lauren's journey from being underestimated to taking control of her destiny, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's plenty more real, raw, and inspiring stories coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply living your truth,